Some disappearances have haunted mankind for centuries, leaving chilling stories and unanswered questions. Each mystery is more disturbing than the last, and no one knows the full truth. These are the unsolved disappearances that remain etched in history, their unsettling nature still causing people to ask, what really happened? The disappearance of Captain Sir John Franklin and his Arctic expedition, 1845. The year was 1845, and Captain Sir John Franklin, a renowned British explorer, set out to conquer the icy expanse of the Arctic in search of the elusive Northwest Passage, a sea route through the frozen North America to the Pacific Ocean. Franklin, a seasoned navigator, had 2 ships under his command, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, with a crew of 128 men. They left England full of hope and promise, but months passed without a word. The expedition, which was supposed to take only a few months, never returned. When a search mission was finally launched, they found the ships abandoned, trapped in the ice, but without any signs of battle, distress, or struggle. The crew's journals were discovered later, revealing a terrifying picture of starvation, scurvy, and madness. They had tried to push through the ice, making several desperate attempts to reach civilization, but nothing could save them from the freezing grip of the Arctic. Some of the crew resorted to cannibalism in their fight to survive. The most chilling part of this mystery? No remains or bodies were ever found. Did they succumb to the elements? Or did something more sinister occur within those icy waters? Over the years, many theories have emerged, from treacherous mutiny to a supernatural force. Still, Franklin and his crew remain lost, their fate sealed in the frozen, unexplored corners of the Arctic. The Lost Colony of Roanoke, 1587. In 1587, a group of 115 settlers, led by John White, arrived on Roanoke Island, now part of North Carolina. The plan was simple: establish a colony in the New World. However, when White returned in 1590 after a supply trip to England, he found the colony completely deserted. Not a soul was left behind. There were no bodies, no signs of any struggle, nothing. All that remained was a single clue carved into a tree: Croatoan. The name referred to a nearby island where some of the settlers had previously made contact with a native tribe. White searched the area, but found no trace of the settlers, not even on Croatoan Island. There was no evidence of an attack or a mass migration. Were they taken by the local natives? Did they assimilate into the indigenous population, abandoning their homes forever? Or did they try to escape by sea only to disappear in a storm? The disappearance of the Roanoke colony has never been solved, and the mystery lingers, chilling in its uncertainty. The Disappearance of Amelia Earhart, 1937. Amelia Earhart, one of the most famous aviators of the 20th century, was attempting to become the first woman to fly around the world. Her final leg was to take her across the vast expanse of the Pacific, from Papua New Guinea to Howland Island. It should have been routine for a pilot of her skill, but when she and her navigator, Fred Noonan, failed to make contact with their destination, panic set in. During their final radio transmission, Earhart's words were broken, fragmented, and difficult to decipher. The 2 planes disappeared, seemingly swallowed by the endless ocean. Despite one of the largest search missions in aviation history, neither Earhart nor her plane were ever found. There were only a few pieces of wreckage scattered on nearby islands, leading to speculation that Earhart had made a forced landing on a remote island and eventually perished there. But no remains were ever uncovered. Was she lost at sea? Did she crash somewhere on a remote island, living her final days in desperate isolation? Or was she captured and forced into a different life? The unanswered questions about Amelia Earhart's fate have become part of her mysterious legend. The disappearance of Malaysia Airlines flight MH370-2014 March 8, 2014 seemed like a normal day for passengers aboard Malaysia Airlines flight MH370, traveling from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. But shortly after takeoff, the plane's communication with air traffic control was lost. Radar tracked the aircraft for a while, but then, as the plane neared the southern Indian Ocean, all contact ceased. The plane simply vanished, as if it had been erased from existence. What followed was one of the largest search operations in history, but no wreckage was found for months. Eventually, small pieces of debris from the plane were found washed up on remote islands, but no definitive answers came with them. Was it mechanical failure? Hijacking? Or was it a deliberate act by someone on board? Some believe the plane was deliberately diverted off course. Others think it crashed and sank into the depths of the ocean without a trace. To this day, Flight MH370 remains a haunting mystery, its fate obscured by the deep, unyielding waters of the Indian Ocean. The Disappearance of the Sodder Children, 1945. On Christmas Eve, 1945, the Sodder family's home in Fayetteville, West Virginia, was engulfed in a fire. But when firefighters arrived, they found no sign of the 5 children who had been inside. Martha, 14, Maurice, 11, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5. George and Jenny Sodder had managed to escape, but their children had vanished without a trace. The fire was strange. Despite the intensity, no bodies were ever recovered. Later it was discovered that the fire might have been deliberately set to cover up the children's abduction. The Sodders received strange phone calls and letters suggesting their children might still be alive, but no proof ever emerged. What happened to the 5 children? Did they perish in the fire or were they taken? And if they were kidnapped, why was there no trace of them? The mystery deepened as the years went by, leaving the Sodders in a constant state of grief and uncertainty. The Disappearance of the Beaumont Children, 1966. On Australia Day, 1966, Jane, 9, Arna, 7, and Grant, 4. Beaumont went to the beach in Glenelg, South Australia. Their parents allowed them to go alone, as it was a familiar place. But when their parents returned to pick them up, there was no sign of the children. Their belongings were still on the beach, but the children were gone. The police investigation was swift, but the search for the Beaumont children turned up nothing. Witnesses reported seeing the children talking to a man, but no one could identify him. Despite an extensive investigation and theories about abduction or foul play, the children's whereabouts were never discovered. Could they have been taken by a stranger? Did they wander off and become lost? Or did something more sinister occur? The mystery remains unsolved, leaving Australia with a cold, chilling silence. The Disappearance of the Flannan Isles. Lighthouse Keepers, 1900. The Flannan Isles, a small group of islands off Scotland's west coast, were home to a lonely lighthouse. On December 15, 1900, a supply ship arrived to deliver provisions to the lighthouse keepers. But when they reached the lighthouse, they found it completely abandoned. There was no sign of the 3 men who were supposed to be tending the light: Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and William Ross. What the ship's crew found was unnerving. The lighthouse was fully operational, but the beds of the keepers were undisturbed. The dinner table was set, but the men were gone. Strangely, no footprints were found leading away from the lighthouse. Some theorized that the men had been swept away in a storm. Others believed they were abducted or met with a violent end. Yet there was no trace of their fate. The disappearance of the 3 keepers remains one of the eeriest and most unexplained events in maritime history. The Disappearance of the Yuba County 5, 1959. In February 1959, 5 young men from Yuba County, California, went missing after attending a basketball game. They drove to a remote area in the Sierra Nevada mountains, But when their car was found abandoned, there was no sign of them. The search that followed uncovered bizarre clues. 4 of the men's bodies were eventually found, but scattered across a wide area, far from their vehicle. What was even stranger was the circumstances of their deaths. One man was found in a remote cabin, sitting on a cot. Another was discovered wearing only his pajamas, far from the group. No one could explain how or why they had separated, or why they wandered so far from their car in freezing conditions. Could this have been a tragic accident, or did something more sinister happen to them? To this day, no one knows what really occurred, and the mystery of the Yuba County Five endures. The Disappearance of Jim Thompson, 1967. Jim Thompson, an American businessman known as the Silk King of Thailand, mysteriously vanished during a vacation in the Malaysian jungle on March 26, 1967. Thompson had taken a walk through the forest after dinner, but he never returned. His disappearance sparked an international search, but there was no trace of him. Theories abound about what happened to Thompson. Some believe he was kidnapped by the Thai government or political forces. Others speculate he was attacked by wild animals or succumbed to the elements. Despite years of investigation, the mystery remains unsolved, and Thompson's disappearance remains one of the most puzzling in history. The Disappearance of Lord Lucan, 1974. In 1974, Lord Lucan's life took a dark turn when his wife, Veronica, was found brutally murdered, along with the family's nanny. Lord Lucan was the prime suspect in the case, but when the police arrived at his home, he was gone, vanishing without a trace. A nationwide manhunt followed, but no trace of him was ever found. Some believe he escaped to the Channel Islands, others think he fled to Africa. There are even theories suggesting he faked his own death. His disappearance has haunted investigators for decades, and to this day, Lord Lucan remains one of the most famous missing persons in the world. The Disappearance of Natalie Wood, 1981. On November 29, 1981, actress Natalie Wood vanished from the deck of her yacht while on a trip with her husband Robert Wagner and her co-star Christopher Walken. The yacht, Splendor, was anchored off the coast of Catalina Island, and Wood was last seen arguing with Wagner before her disappearance. When her body was found floating in the water a few days later, there were no clear answers. The circumstances surrounding her death were suspicious. Had she fallen overboard, or was she pushed? The investigation has been complicated by conflicting accounts and inconsistent evidence. Was it an accident, a tragic fall, or was something more sinister at play? The disappearance of Natalie Wood remains one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. The Disappearance of the Hinterkaifeck family, 1922. In 1922, the Gruber family lived on a remote farmstead in the Bavarian forest of Germany. But one day, the entire family vanished without a trace. The police discovered that the family had been murdered, with all 6 members killed in their home. Yet the strange part was that the murderer seemed to live on the property for days after the crime. There were signs that someone had used the family's farm tools and fed the animals. Despite an extensive investigation, no suspect was ever identified. The mystery of the Hinterkaifeck murders, the chilling isolation of the farmhouse, and the disturbing evidence of someone living there afterward remains one of Germany's most infamous cases. The Disappearance of DB Cooper, 1971. On November 24, 1971, a man under the alias Dan Cooper hijacked a Boeing 727 en route from Portland to Seattle. After receiving a ransom of $200,000, Cooper parachuted out of the plane somewhere over the rugged forests of Washington state. Despite an extensive search, no trace of Cooper was ever found, and the ransom money, which had been carefully tracked, was never spent. Who was DB Cooper? Did he survive the jump? Was he a criminal mastermind or a daring adventurer? His disappearance remains a thrilling mystery, one that has sparked countless theories and investigations. The disappearance of the Eilean Moor, Lighthouse Keepers, 1900. On the small island of Eilean Moor in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland, 3 lighthouse keepers disappeared without a trace in December 1900. Their last log entry mentioned a storm, but it was otherwise uneventful. When a ship arrived to check on the lighthouse, it was found completely abandoned. The light had been extinguished, and the keepers were gone. Strange things were found, including an overturned chair and a table left in disarray. But despite thorough investigations, no explanation has ever been found for their disappearance. Could they have been swept away by the storm? Or did something else, something far darker, take them? The disappearance of the Springfield 3, 1992. In 1992, Cheryl Levitt, her daughter Susie Streeter, and Susie's friend Stacy McCall vanished from their home in Springfield, Missouri, without a trace. They had been planning to attend a party that evening, but when Susie's boyfriend arrived at the house to pick her up, there was no sign of them. The door was left unlocked, and their belongings were found scattered around the house. Despite intense investigation, no evidence has ever been found to explain what happened to them. Could they have been abducted? Or did they run away, leaving behind everything they knew? The fate of the Springfield 3 is still one of the most disturbing unsolved disappearances in modern history. The disappearance of the Beaumont children, 1966. On the morning of January 26, 1966, 3 children, Jane, 9, Arna, 7, and Grant, 4, from Adelaide, Australia, excitedly set off for a day at the beach. They had promised their parents they'd meet them back at the bus stop in a few hours. But when the parents arrived, their children were nowhere to be found. The belongings they had left on the beach, buckets, towels, and shoes, were still there, but there was no sign of them. The beach was crowded that day, and witnesses reported seeing the children interacting with a strange man, but no one could confirm who he was. A massive search was launched, but no trace of the children was ever found. Their disappearance, with no clear explanation, shocked the nation. Some believe the children were abducted. Others speculate they wandered off and became lost. But the truth remains elusive. What happened to the Beaumont children? Why was there no sign of a struggle? The mystery remains unsolved to this day. The disappearance of the Phoenix Lights, 1997. On March 13, 1997, thousands of people across Arizona witnessed a bizarre, unexplained event in the sky. A series of lights, 3 to 5 bright orbs, moved in perfect formation across the night sky, casting an eerie glow over the land below. Some saw it as a massive, triangular-shaped craft, while others simply described it as strange lights. As soon as the lights disappeared, a massive investigation began. The U.S. government and local authorities initially claimed the lights were simply flares dropped by military aircraft during training exercises. But thousands of eyewitnesses disagreed, saying that the lights moved with a deliberate, intelligent design and didn't behave like any known aircraft. The Phoenix Lights have become one of the most famous UFO sightings in history, but still, the mystery persists. What were the lights? And why were so many people compelled to keep quiet about it? The disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa, 1975. James Riddle Hoffa, better known as Jimmy Hoffa, was a powerful labor leader and the president of the Teamsters Union in the 1950s and 60s. Known for his fiery leadership and ties to organized crime, Hoffa's life was filled with political intrigue and controversy. But on July 30, 1975, Hoffa was scheduled to meet with 2 mafia figures at the Machis Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township, Michigan. He never showed up. There were no witnesses, no phone calls, and no clues to what had happened. The only thing left was his car, parked outside the restaurant. Despite an intense investigation and years of theories, including that he was murdered by the mob or even buried under Giants Stadium, no evidence has ever been found. His disappearance remains one of the most talked about mysteries in American history. Was he murdered to silence him? Or did he escape the clutches of the mob? Hoffa's fate is still one of the most elusive in criminal history. These are just a few of the countless disappearances that have baffled authorities, experts, and the public for years. Some vanished without a trace, some left behind cryptic clues, and others left entire communities haunted by their absence. Whatever the reasons, whether foul play, natural causes, or sheer mystery, each case remains an unsolved riddle. And perhaps some of these disappearances will never be explained, forever living in the shadows of history.